Streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and blasttheradio.com, this is The Lowell Green Show. The number to call and be heard around the world is 613-413-2217. Or email Lowell at blasttheradio.com. And now, here is Lowell Green.
Thank you, John. Look, let's be honest here, okay? Just for the hell of it. O'Toole won. Trudeau lost. Simple and as obvious as that. You know, you can forget policies, all right? They had to expound some policies last night, but, I mean, hardly anybody believes the promises that are made during debates of that nature anyway. That's not what matters. The only thing that really matters, particularly in a television debate, is how did the candidates look? How did they act? That's all that really matters, particularly in television. Because television is a cool medium. It favors cool personalities, people who look like they are in control. And there's no question that O'Toole was the man who was easily the best when it comes to that. He was calm, cool, collected, professional, and dare I say it, hey, he looked prime ministerial. People would look at him and his performance, whether they agree with his policies or not, or whether they understand any of the policies, because most people don't, whether they agree with any of that, if he looked prime ministerial, people can say, you know what, the guy looks like maybe he can handle himself. I can envision this guy, internationally meeting other prime ministers and presidents and holding his own. This is a guy that I could vote for and trust that he would represent me well. That's all that matters. Forget the policies. And there's no question that on that basis alone, he won. O'Toole won the debate. But that aside, okay, the fact that Trudeau looked frustrated, rattled, confused, a little sweaty from time to time, nervous, means he lost. There's no question about it. I mean, anybody that doesn't think that he lost is obviously a very strong liberal devotee or, a Trudeau fan, and no matter what the guy does, they're still going to say, oh, he won. He didn't win. He looked terrible for the most part. Now, in fairness, he was under attack from all sides. He is the prime minister. He's got a record to defend, and, I mean, pretty hard to defend most of the record, let's be very, very honest. But aside from O'Toole's performance, the fact that Trudeau lost means that O'Toole won. Because there's really only two combatants in that ring that matter, okay? That is Trudeau and O'Toole. That's what the fight is about. The rest is just ancillary, all right? So if Trudeau lost, which he clearly did, that means, no matter what you think of the other candidates, if Trudeau lost, O'Toole won on that basis alone. I just don't see how anybody could dispute that. Now, I'd be glad to take your texts, your phone calls, agree, disagree, got some reservations. I agree that Ms. Paul of the Green Party looked very appealing. This was her first appearance in front of most of us. We had a good look at her. Pretty impressive. She appears to be an honest, forthright, principled person, intelligent, sadly lives in some kind of dream world. She believes that somehow or other we can, stop about 20% of our economy, stop all fossil fuel production, which employs well over 1 million people. We can do all of that with no damage to the economy. I mean, she, as a person, she's a very appealing person. But in this case, the policies do matter. I mean, it is so outrageous that we could just scrap, fossil fuels and without damaging the economy. I mean, only an idiot would believe that. But personally, she's she's quite appealing. And I'm going to tell you, she was no slouch on the attack either. I think that one of the most telling blows against Trudeau was when Ms. Paul turned to him and said, I don't think that you are a feminist. And she went through the litany of all of the people that he had turfed out and had left him and so forth. And Trudeau was very angry. Here, in my opinion, when he turned on her very angrily and said something to the effect, I don't need to take caucus management lessons from you. I thought this was a real window into his real personality. Vindictive, angry, frustrated. I thought that was very revealing. But what's your assessment, folks? Does my assessment of this match yours? How anybody could even suggest that Trudeau held his own in this is quite frankly nuts. If you think that he held his own, can you tell me one question that he actually ever answered? Now, John, are you there, John?
I am here.
Do you mind telling us, you had a very interesting observation concerning one of his statements concerning long-term care. I hadn't picked up on that. Can you just, do you mind, and maybe you don't want to give an opinion on this, but
No, I don't mind.
I thought your take on this was very interesting. Explain to us.
It was when the conversation turned to, or the question was put to each of the leaders, would you put one of your parents in long-term care? Would you be comfortable with them being in long-term care? And he turned to the camera and he, does his little smiley thing. And he says, well, my mom's 73rd birthday is tomorrow. Don't worry, Mom. Don't worry. We're not going to put you in a home. Ha 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 ha. It came across to me like he was like, oh God, that's the last place on earth I'd ever want to put a parent.
So the implication being very clear that he's got enough money that his mother doesn't have to worry about going into long-term care.
Well, there's that too, but he just seemed horrified at the idea. That said it all.
And yet, he's got to accept some responsibility for conditions in long-term care.
A little bit.
It's a very interesting observation. That's something that I hadn't picked up on. Other people may have some thoughts on that. How, as I say, anybody could suggest that Trudeau even held his own. I think you've got to really, really have a stretch of the imagination there. Now, the format itself has come under heavy criticism, but I don't know. I found it rather interesting. The fact that I thought the moderator did a great job.
Did you?
And yeah, I really did. Yeah, no, I do. She clamped down on Trudeau for running overtime and failing to answer questions. That was pretty appealing. She did her best to keep these people within the parameters. She was handed the format. She had to deal with the format she was given. I thought she did rather well. And by the way, I must say this, that unlike some other debates, those questions, John, and I think you got to agree with this, those were tough questions. I can't think of a single softball question to any of them. Those were tough questions that were being asked, not only by the moderator, but by others as well, including the journalists. And I must tell you that one of the surprising things for me was, until yesterday, we were led to believe, and in fact I even commented on this more than once, the fact that we were told that the issue of Afghanistan and the fiasco, the tragedy there, was not to be raised, nor was the fate of the two Michaels in China. But surprise, surprise, very clearly there's enough public pressure, I guess, applied. So whoever is organizing these things decided we'd better have this on the agenda, which they did. And by the way, Trudeau looked very, very shaky when pressed on this, particularly by O'Toole. I thought O'Toole made a very telling blow when he turned to Trudeau and said, you called this election the very day that Kabul fell. Why did you do that? Why, you should have, the implication being, you should have dealt with the crisis there. We've got, several thousand Canadian citizens, hundreds of others who helped us, and rather than deal with it, you called the election that very day. I thought that was a very telling blow against Trudeau there as well. But if you've got any comments, I'd love to hear from you on that.
We've got a bunch whenever you're ready.
Yeah. All right, let's hear what people have to say, whether they agree with me or not, John.
Yep. First in is Lisa by email, Lowell@blasttheradio.com. She says, Lowell, while there was no real clear winner per se, Miss Paul of the Green Party stood out as she was provoked by each of the men to elicit an anger response, something men are notorious for. She remained calm, cool, collected, and level-headed, despite their attempts to have her flip out in anger, to shout and yell in order to label her as an emotional or physio bitch. Men do
No,
this to women.
I disagree with that. I didn't see that. Certainly not from O'Toole, and I didn't see that from Singh either. So I disagree with you, Lisa, on that. I agree with you that Ms. Paul did a good job. There's no question about it. Although there's very clear that she's not ready for a big time leadership. That's for sure. Go ahead, John, please.
Craig says, our boy Aaron O'Toole won hands down. He made the best impression of a leader. He lost, speaking of Trudeau, he lost the second French debate as well. Na, hey, goodbye, says Craig. Chris says, if he stood in front of us defending our country, he can stand for me as my next prime minister. Mike says, I loved it when she confronted Trudeau and told him he was not a feminist. Lisa says, Greens and NDP are always splitting the damn vote. They have no hope of ever forming a federal government and are always taking votes away. Marcia, I believe this is the first time we've got a comment from you. Welcome, Marcia. She says, Anime Paul believes in the Great Leap Forward. Sound familiar? The Chinese Communist Party mantra. Peter says, Rebel wasn't able to ask questions, even though in 10 people in phone line, and didn't answer a Rebel reporter who asked a question. A woman, he always insults women or ignores them. That was tough, Peter. Peter, you should call the show so I don't have to read those. Terry says,
Peter, we love you, Peter, but take a little bit more time in constructing those texts so that they make a little bit of sense. Don't put poor old John on the spot like
Peter,
that. Thank you.
Peter, could you write in cursive for me, please? I can read cursive. I'm sorry.
Read it over before you send it, please.
Yeah, I should read it over before I put it on the air. All right, Kathy says, why was the Bloc even in the debate? As clearly clearly stated he doesn't want to be PM of Canada.
All right, can I address that, please?
Of course, yes.
I agree. We had two French language debates and where the Bloc obviously shone. This was in his first language. And by the way, when you saw the difficulty that Blanchette was having last night with his second language, the English language, you understand the difficulty of people like O'Toole dealing in the second language.
For sure.
I thought that was a very good illustration. But I agree with the letter writer. There's no way that the Bloc should be on a national debate. They want nothing to do with Canada. Well, they want our money, that's for sure. But they claim that they want nothing to do with Canada, that they have nothing to say about Canada, etc. It's all about Quebec. So why are they on a national debate? I'll tell you who should have been there. I hate the guy, but Maxime Bernier should have been there. Maxime Bernier has small support, but he has support. My feeling is, there's no question in my mind that Maxime Bernier is just a mean, vindictive guy. He's mad at the Conservatives because they didn't elect him as their leader, so he's trying to punish the Conservative Party. That's the only reason he's in this, okay? He knows he can't win, but he feels he'll take votes away and, maybe help Trudeau win. But nonetheless, I think he should have been there. That's democracy. Maxime Bernier should have been there, if for no other reason that we can all have a look at this guy. We can ask him some tough questions. What would you have done in Afghanistan? What would you do about the Michaels? What would you do about Indigenous affairs and so forth? It's right now, to be honest with you, Maxime has got 4 to 5%, which is enough, of course, to kill the Conservatives, perhaps. But it seems to me that if people were able to ask him some of these tough questions, we don't know. I mean, has he got any policy whatsoever other than that he doesn't believe in vaccines? I mean, it seems to me that we've got maybe 4 or 5% of the Canadian population going to vote for this guy strictly because he doesn't want to get vaccinated. I mean, Jimmy, geez, Murphy.
Well, can I ask, who decides who can be on the debate and who is not on the debate?
There's a consortium of, I believe it's the CBC, CTV, Global, and maybe somebody else, I'm not sure.
So all the broadcasters that put that on last
essentially,
night,
they make the decision. That's my understanding.
Okay,
now,
thank you.
I must tell you that Trudeau turned down at least 2 other English language debates, the Monk debate and I believe another one. He didn't want to do it, so if the prime minister is not going to be involved in a debate, not much sense in having one. So to a degree, it was Trudeau's decision. Now, as to the questions, etc., I'm not sure who comes up with them. Now, in the case of the journalists, obviously it was the journalist who came up with these questions, but the other ones, I'm not sure. It's all rather hazy as far as I am concerned. Now, but I would like to, my view, I think that if we're going to have 4 or 5%, maybe enough to scuttle the Conservatives, voting for a guy strictly because he's opposed to vaccines, I think that this guy should have been out there front and center so we can all have a look at him and find out, do you have any other policies? It might help him, it might harm him, but at least we would know, right? Shields. I have been talking, the last couple of days about a new directive that's gone out from the Government of Canada that as of the 1st of next year, a lot of the lower-priced appliances, all kinds of appliances, will no longer be available. Now, I've had a couple of people say, well, why can't the Canadian manufacturers just, if you have to have these Energy Star levels, why can't we do that? Because almost all of the appliances are made in the United States. Canada is only about 10% of the total market. Okay, for these. So there's no way that an American manufacturer is going to change his assembly line for 10% of the population. So in other words, a lot of these lower priced appliances, freezers, fridges, dishwashers, etc., are not going to be available. All that will be available in all probability come next year are going to be more expensive models, Energy Star models, which will be more expensive. Not only that, but a lot of the models that are now available will no longer be available in Canada, which means that in addition to increased costs, there will likely be a shortage. So just once again, just want to alert you all, alert your friends. Give Shields a call. They'll explain the whole thing to you. They've got all in stock. The prices are very reasonable, as you know. But, just think about it, folks. Some of those appliances that you think, well, maybe I can get them in the spring, maybe a good idea to buy them now, or at least get a good look at it. John, you've got some more texts coming in here.
Yes, we do. Lisa says, so glad the Green leader pummeled the turd, R.E. firing Philpott and Wilson Raybould.
Can I say something? Can I
Yes.
just say something? I am sick and tired of this word, the turd. This is something that some people thought was really smart at first. You know what? He's still the prime minister. You could not like the guy, but the position itself deserves some respect. Please stop referring to him as the turd and all of these derogatory names. It doesn't do you any good, and it doesn't do the country any good, okay? Sorry, John, go ahead.
No, that's all right. And yes, you can always say something. It's kind of your show. 613-413-2217 is the number. We'd love your phone calls. We appreciate you sharing this. Of course, all your link details are at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. A texter here says, I agree about Maxime. Have him answer tough questions. Let Canadians see who he really is. Michelle says, hi, Lowell. I finally get to see you. I've been listening to you on the podcast. Thank you, Michelle. Nice to have you with us today. Lori says, Conservatives will win. Trudeau has messed everything up. People are getting frustrated. Terry says, imagine how angry Trudeau gets in private, referring to how angry he got last night. Sonia says, I watched the debate last night. Trudeau was awful. Peter says, going to vote today, an advance poll, and voting with an ink pen. Tom says, although, John, the moderator did ask Trudeau point blank if he would put his mom in a home, and Trudeau said yes. Tom, thank you for that. I must have missed it while I was laughing. Nina says, O'Toole won hands down. He shows confidence, level-headed, and very professional. After all, he joined the military at an early age, put himself through university, became a lawyer, and then a politician. He's definitely got drive and would bring respect back to Canada.
Can I just comment on that? I am one of those who, up until fairly recently, was very critical of Aaron O'Toole. I thought that he should have been out there more, as I think most of you agreed. I was not at all satisfied with his performance. I thought for sure that he was going to lose it for the Conservatives. But I must say that recently he has really impressed me. This guy, he's a very surprising person. And very clearly, when you examine his background, you will see that here is a guy in the old-fashioned context, raised himself up by his own bootstraps, something that I really respect. He came from a very middle-class family, low income, well, not low income, but certainly middle class, and he did this on his own. as I say, joined the military, distinguished himself in the military, put himself through university, which he's all paid for, apparently by himself. So I think you got to give the guy credit. And very clearly, there's more to this guy than I think many of us saw at first. After all, I mean, he did win the leadership. Some of the conservatives who voted must have seen something there that I didn't see, quite frankly. But I am beginning to see it now. This guy is, among other things, I think a bit surprising. John, you got some more texts coming in?
Yes, we do. The journalists from different outlets were seen to be cohorting with each other on what softball questions to ask. The Rebel, True North, and Keenan Bexty gave real questions.
No, just a minute. Hold it. No, I disagree. I thought the questions, I can't think of a single softball question. These were tough questions addressed to everybody, including, by the way, tough questions addressed to Justin Trudeau. This was not a softball exercise. These were tough questions. This was hardball stuff. Please stop telling me how it would have all been different if Maxime had questions or the Rebel. Okay, the questions were tough. The questions were very important. These are some of the issues: the economy, Indigenous affairs, etc., Afghanistan. All of these came up. Thank you, John. More text coming in.
Sean, thank you for your comments. Trudeau acted most of the time like a kid taking his toys and going home. Hazel says Bernier does not have an official party, so therefore should not be there. Lisa was impressed by O'Toole, even though the election didn't need to be called. Might be a blessing if Trudeau is turf. Some of the comments coming in. Just got a text right now, 613-413-2217. We're hearing both of you simultaneously. Okay, good, I guess. I don't know.
I have to have a sort of an aside comment here. One of my least favorite people in this country is Rosemary Barton. I have commented before, but during the last debate between Scheer and Trudeau, Rosemary Barton was one of the moderators. Remember, there were several moderators. It was a very strange format, and she's supposed to have been an unbiased moderator from the CBC, if you can imagine. And all of the while that she's there pretending to be an unbiased observer, an unbiased moderator, she was suing. I don't know if Andrew Scheer knew at the time that she was suing the Conservative Party, but she was. So here is this woman posing as an unbiased moderator, suing the people that she is supposed to be moderating. I found that very, very, pretty disgusting for anybody, let alone a journalist. But at any rate, Rosemary Barton is still there. So last night, right after the debate, of course, there's the big journalist scrum. They're all going to give their interpretation of who won, who lost, what was said, etc., etc. And Rosemary Barton's first comment was, well, I thought that the format boxed Trudeau in. I almost fell off my chair. The format boxed him in? Hey, his ears were boxed, no question about that. But nobody boxed him in. I mean, I must tell you that there were four respondents there, a journalist, whoever the hell it was. Andrew Cohen was one of them. And they all just sort of shook their heads. In fact, Cohen, who is for the most part a staunch liberal, even he said, no, he wasn't boxed in. But I just found this very interesting, that doesn't matter whether she knew damn well that Trudeau had performed very poorly. She was trying to make an excuse for him. This Rosemary Barton, posing as an unbiased reporter. I mean, it's time that this stopped, okay? And now, mind you, I must tell you this, that Rosemary Barton knows damn well that if O'Toole wins, she's probably out of a job. In fact, a lot of those biased people on the CBC are out of a job. Rosemary Barton will probably be lined up trying to get a job, to replace Rob Snow, for all I know, or somebody. All right, more texts coming in, John.
A side note, by the way, you and I have been talking about Rosemary Barton being a moderator. I thought she was going to head up the whole thing, so I was actually quite impressed that she wasn't the moderator, but she did obviously ask some questions.
Can I tell you something? If she had been the sole moderator, I doubt very much if Erin O'Toole would have taken part. The Conservatives know very well the bias that she has. I mean, so thank God that she was. I thought the moderator, I know you weren't now that impressed, but I found her to be very unbiased. I think she asked tough questions of everybody there, and she did her best to keep them under control. As I've already said, I thought it was pretty impressive when she went after Trudeau more than once to stay within his time. In typical Trudeau fashion, of course, he tried to talk over other people and take up more time. In fact, Blanchette turned to him one time and said, "Do you remember that?" John said, "You've had 5 minutes more than me." I don't know how he knew this, but he was obviously keeping score.
Well, I had timers up on the screens that they were staring at.
But he must have been keeping score. He said, you had 5 minutes more than I had. Oh, boy. Okay.
I got a kick out of him. I'll be honest. I don't like his politics, but I got a real kick. I thought he was actually quite brilliant. Our texter is back regarding their comment on Rebel Media and the softball questions.
Yeah.
They say the German reporter asked how he was after stones were thrown at him. Well, I mean, okay. Other comments coming in on Facebook, on Twitch, on YouTube. Sonia says, Mr. O'Toole has impressed me. He looks and sounds prime ministerial. Tom says, Evan Solomon is one of the best commentators and broadcasters. Laurie says, Mr. Trudeau thinks he's never wrong. Must have been some childhood he had. Ray says, I was going to vote in the advance poll, but I don't want my vote sitting in a box for 10 days. And
why does it go stale? Your vote goes stale?
I guess so.
It's not fish, it's a vote.
Nina says, Rosemary Barton and Justin Trudeau are the reasons I can't watch TV anymore. I cringe if I turn on the TV and hear or see either of them. Lisa says she was impressed with the moderator as well. Okay, well, I stand alone on that one, apparently. Bob says, John, do not read this one. I was watching it. Okay, I'm not going to read that one. Craig says, Ronald Reagan said it best. If you are defending or explaining, you're losing. Trudeau was on the ropes in both the French and English debates.
As an example of what I'm talking about, how television is the cool medium, do you remember, well, many of you are too young to remember, but the famous debate between Nixon and Kennedy. And Kennedy was sort of an unknown, but he came across as very cool, calm, collected, and Nixon was sweating. And there's no question that the sweat cost him the election. He didn't look cool, and Kennedy did. There's just one example. And another example, and by the way, Warren Kinsella deals with this in The Sun today, also points out how, television is a cool medium, also talks about Ronald Reagan. Reagan, no matter what attack he was under, he always appeared composed, quite often humorous in his case, but always calm, cool, and composed. And that's very true. I'll never forget one of Reagan's best lines. It was during a debate, a televised debate, and someone said, because Reagan at the time he was running for president was, I forget how old, but he was not a young man. And so someone said, question to the effect, the fact that your age, is that going to be a problem? And he said, I have promised that I will not deal with my opponent's youth, and I will not make my opponent's youth as an issue here. And of course, everybody laughed. It was great. Centennial Glass. Once again, folks, here we go. Very, very reputable firm. I keep telling people, if you're going to spend a lot of money, you're going to buy all new windows and doors or whatever for your house or office. It's a fairly major expense, or can be, and you want to make sure that you're going to deal with people who are honest, above board, and do good work. Check out Centennial Glass. You'll see all of the references there. I mean, they've done business in this city since 1967. So there are all kinds of very, very satisfied customers. If it's glass of any kind, windows, doors, mirrors, glass furniture, custom glass furniture, whatever it is, repairs, emergency services, yes, Centennial Glass. They're on Industrial Avenue, not far from the train yards, and in downtown Renfrew as well. More texts, John. We're running out of time here.
On Twitch, Richard says, still think Max should have been included last night. And a text at 613-413-2217. Trudeau was pretty angry looking, taking questions until he saw a CTV reporter was going to ask him a question. Then he had a smile on his face.
We're almost out of time, so I've got to bring you up to date. I mentioned a little bit earlier in the program about how Ms. Paul of the Green Party is living in some sort of la-la land if she thinks that we can just scrap fossil fuels, cancel, tear up all of the pipelines, etc., etc. I just want to point out that we have 42 wind farms in this province alone. We have millions, and I mean millions, of solar panels. They have cost us tens of billions of dollars. And at 1 p.m. today, Wind was producing less than 3% of all of the power we were burning. Solar was producing slightly more than 1%. So between wind and solar at 1 o'clock today, fairly breezy day, fairly sunny day, wind and solar, this great new green revolutionary power source, producing less than 4%. So I ask Ms. Paul and all of you greenies out there and all of you liberal wokes, if we're going to rely on wind and solar, what are we going to do when the wind doesn't blow? What are we going to do when the sun doesn't shine? And I have news for you. The sun doesn't shine. The sun does not shine at night. I don't know if Miss Paul knows this or not. Thank you all. We'll be back come Monday.
The Lowell Green Show is seen and heard live around the world at 2 p.m. Eastern. Connect with us online at blasttheradio.com/Lowell Green. Can't join us live? Download the Lowell Green podcast. Available on Apple, Spotify, Google, and more. Ask your smart speaker to play the Lowell Green podcast. This is a production of blasttheradio.com.